I thought maybe I'd start off the presentation today with just a 3.5-minute video about what is an e-portfolio. Obviously, portfolios exist in paper, and the word E in front of it means electronic. So it's taking the paper portfolio and making it an electronic version. D2L has put together a video about e-portfolios. They do take the opportunity to advocate their vehicle, D2L e-portfolio, but it's a very good explanation about what an e-portfolio or a portfolio that's in paper version is all about, and I wanted to share it with you.
So what does Desire to Learn ePortfolio have to do with you? Simply put, ePortfolio is a folder of your work, achievements, reflections, and notes, all made accessible online. If you apply to a graduate or doctor's program, for a new job, or to a new school, you will inevitably need to articulate your skills and demonstrate your abilities and achievements. Traditionally, you would include your resume and cover letter. Applications would be lengthy, wordy, and scattered with bullet lists. And to showcase all your achievements would have amounted to collating piles and piles of paper. Desire to Learn learning environment enables you to add any piece of work, presentation, instructor or peer feedback, audio or video files, or anything else you deem appropriate to your ePortfolio as an artifact that you can then organize into suitable collections. You can also add your own commentary, thoughts, explanations, or notes to your collection in the form of reflections. To share your collection with potential employers, professors, and peers, you display your collection in a presentation, or you can simply keep your collection just to yourself for lifelong learning. For example, if you have a great idea for a research paper, and you're creating a proposal and want to solicit the feedback of friends, employers, or professors, you can collect all your notes, research, work, presentations, and external sources on a single presentation on ePortfolio, and send a link to the presentation in an email to anyone you want. You can anticipate your audiences will comment on your presentation or items that you added within it. And you can make use of social learning with your audience's help, enriching your ideas with their comments and feedback. If you want to keep artifacts just to yourself, you can do that too. Often, it's worthwhile to reflect on your past work, to track your work style, improvements, or if you're particularly proud of an achievement and want to keep it for record, just archive it away along with your learning objectives and encourage yourself to reflect on those achievements, to track your own growth and thought processes, and demonstrate the practical use of your academic knowledge acquired over the years. So if your intention is to stand out and differentiate yourself with your work and achievements, what better way to articulate your collective experiences than to assemble and organize them according to who you're trying to impress, and to demonstrate your practical knowledge of your academic career by reflecting on your proudest work, all on Desire to Learn ePortfolio.
So I thought that was just a nice clarification on what e-portfolios can do. There are a lot of different vehicles that can be used to put together an e-portfolio. In the past, we used to use a software called MindView, and then when we transitioned over to the new LMS, ePortfolio became a component or an add-on service that we could purchase with the learning environment, and we chose to do that. So. Another important concept with portfolios, which really is not different from anything else, is deciding what the purpose of the portfolio is going to be for you. The introduction there was the video that I showed you. If you do any amount of research into portfolios at all, basically you'll see that there are about 3 different types of portfolios out there. There's the learning portfolio that documents a student's learning. Usually what I've read is that reflections within a learning portfolio are very heavy because the students are reflecting on and making connections through their writing with what they're learning. So usually you'll have a learning portfolio that'll be very heavy in reflections to articulate that learning. The other type is an evaluative portfolio, which is something that John mentioned, something that shows competency. Things you may have requirements of different things that they need to complete, and the person will put that artifact or that item into a portfolio to show that competency. And then the last type is a showcase, which is something that's shared with potential employers to try to seek employment. And that really is the direction that the historical administration went with their portfolio based on the situation that they were in with their students trying to seek employment once they graduate. So that was very, very important, and I think that Pat is really going to speak to that next when she talks about the guidelines and so forth that their department put together for determining the purpose of the portfolio.
If I can get myself wired up here.
Will you provide this portfolio to us?
The PowerPoint?
Yeah, no.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great.
In order for you to understand what our objectives were, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Historical Administration Program, which is within the History Department at Eastern. And it was founded in 1975. It's a master's program with 2 semesters plus a 6-month internship. So it's a kind of a short master's, but it's very intensive. It's highly competitive and is dependent on people sending in an essay and application, going through an application process, and then coming to the campus for an interview. We only accept about 10 students in the program, and they take all of their classes together. We have about 330 graduates, and about 80% of them are in the museum field. Most are in the United States, although we have some in Canada and Mexico, England, and we have one in Kuwait. They wind up in all kinds of museums. They are directors, curators, educators. It's a generalist program, so they are active in most every kind of museum work. And they mostly work in history museums, but other kinds of museums also. There are 5 faculty members. I'm the only part-time one. Gosha is one of our full-time faculty members. I've been teaching in the program since 1985. And I teach courses in leadership and museum administration. And this year we added a new course. It's only a 1-hour course in the spring semester, and that's where the portfolio comes in, because it's part of their training to go out and become leaders in the field. And so we definitely were interested in the idea of a portfolio that would be a showcase. And so these were the objectives that we came up with at the beginning of the year. And our main one was really to concentrate on the idea of using the portfolio in an employment kind of situation. Our secondary goal, which we really weren't emphasizing too much, was to offer opportunities for self-reflection. But now that we're done, I can see that we have more opportunities there than I really thought that we did. So that's what we wanted to accomplish, and thanks. When we got started, we talked about what we would expect from the students. And so this was the short list that we came up with of things that we expected them to do with their portfolios. So as they started actually working on them, these are the things that they were supposed to keep in front of them that we thought would be helpful to them. And we talked about the kind of skills and professional practices that we hope they would use in developing their portfolios. So these are things that we are studying in class anyway. Civic engagement, for instance, is really big in museums these days. Instead of museums being the font of all information and authority, they are much more going out into their communities and sharing ideas with people, and people even curate exhibits from out in the community. So critical thinking, the sort of things that you would probably also be thinking about with your students, are the kinds of things that we do in our classes, and then we also wanted to see reflected in the portfolios.
Sorry.
That's good. So then we started thinking about how would you construct this portfolio. And we first talked about the purpose of using it for a job, and how you could, though, use a portfolio for different reasons. We picked the showcase idea, but there are other ways that you could do it too. So I'm sort of structured, so I gave them some structure to start with, to start with a kind of table of contents, which is not what you call it. What do you call it? The little thing over on the left.
Navigation panel?
The
or
navigation panel. And that they would perhaps start out with an introduction that would be on their homepage that would be about them, and a range of things that they could do with that, and then including some idea of what their skills and experiences were, and that it's some portfolios demonstrate competency. So those were some options that they had. I think we have some more. The evolution that some portfolios show, and then we went into execution. And we gave them some specific guidelines about what they might do. This is not a blog. It's not as informal as that. So we encourage them to use good English and to put it in the third person. I had one student who did not do that. She put hers in the first person. It was okay, but I actually think she would have been better off to have maybe followed this guideline because it comes off a little giddy, I guess is how I would put it. So these are some kind of do's and don'ts that we gave them. No exclamation points, think like Hemingway. And for the most part, when we got to the finished products, they did follow these. So that was good. In trying to most of these students were not familiar with e-portfolios at all. So it was kind of a clean slate. In a way, that was good. And so we talked a bit about what's the difference between having a website, you can have your own personal website, and having a portfolio. And a website is something that people might come to at will, and a portfolio is something that you issue an invitation to people to visit. So there were those kinds of distinctions. And what might be included. You could include a personal website as a link on a portfolio if you wanted to do that. Most certainly you would have a resume. Almost everybody agreed with that. You could put a Facebook page. We did not recommend that. But samples of their work and their travel and their experiences would certainly be appropriate. We started with I think we had about 10 topics when we first started that we were going to run down the left side for this navigation panel. And we went through the rest of the faculty and we bounced this back and forth a bit. And so this is what we came up with as a suggestion for the students, that they would have their banner. They could use the one of the stock ones that are available, or they could make their own, which some of them were capable of doing. And they would have definitely a home page. And then they had some freedom in whether or not they would put in something about their experience. If they had a lot of honors, some of them had a whole page of honors. So that was something that would be worth highlighting and putting in a separate section. Some of them put honors in skills. Some of them are quite skilled in a number of technological things, and so that was a good place for them to have that. And then their resume and a place for their name. As we started this process, we did some information gathering, and I asked students to go out and look for examples of portfolios. They're not as easy to find as you might think, but I put some time into it myself, and I especially looked for some that were not so sterling, because I have found, it's the same with museum exhibits, that you sometimes learn more from a bad example than you do a good example. And I had some doozies, actually. And they could see immediately that that was not the direction that they wanted to go. So we did spend some time looking at what other people had done and trying to figure out how they could individualize theirs and make it something that they would be proud of. And then the actual D2L portfolio, we came over here and had a training session, and Kim was the one that told us all about how to use D2L to do it.
Sure. So what we did, I think it was right before the Christmas break, the students came over and I did a training session with them on D2L ePortfolio so they would know how to use it. And I'll get into that next. The template that Pat brought up, I put that template together in D2L and then pushed it to all the students that were in her class. So when they opened their D2L ePortfolio accounts, they had that template to start working with immediately. And as an instructor, all the instructor accounts for D2L ePortfolio, you have that capability of pushing templates to other students. The students don't have that capability, but the faculty accounts do. One thing that I'll stress with that type of push is when you push something to a student, it belongs to them. You don't maintain any rights over it. They can change it. It literally, you cut the strings when you push something to them. Let's just go ahead and back out of this presentation. And at this point, I just would like to show you the interface of D2L ePortfolio. So if you want to jump on your D2L ePortfolio and kind of follow along with me, and possibly, maybe some of you have already been into D2L ePortfolio. I'm on my home page, and how I access ePortfolio is right up here on the darker blue nav bar. There's an icon and it says the word ePortfolio. Now I want to stress the icon because once you get into courses, the word ePortfolio on that blue nav bar goes away and all you see is the icon. ePortfolio is not connected to any courses, but you can access it from any point within the learning environment, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and choose D2L ePortfolio. And this is the interface. And I'm going to guess that your interface looks very similar to mine, except you probably don't have content right here like I have. And my purpose today is just to show you this front page of the interface and just describe to you what the different areas are. Basically, there are the tabs across the top, the ePortfolio tab, My Items, Explore, and Sharing Groups. From the ePortfolio tab, you can do about anything. You can add artifacts. This right here, if a person would just start typing in this box, this would automatically add a reflection, and that is one type of artifact that you can add to ePortfolio. You can also upload files right here, and you can also add web links or URLs. Okay. In the video for D2L ePortfolio, it said you could add videos and you could add audio files and things like that. A clarification on that is everybody, first of all, this D2L ePortfolio account is yours, okay? And everybody has 2 gigabytes of space in this account, okay? So as far as uploading video files, audio files, and things like that, what's recommended is that they be put somewhere on the internet like YouTube, and then a link in this account, okay? So I want to clarify that. There's a button right over here called Add Other Items. Let's just take a peek behind what's behind that. So far what we can add is we can add a reflection by typing just right in here. We can add a file or we can add a link. I can also create a web document, which is a standalone HTML file in this account, okay? So I can create my own HTML document within here. I can add an audio recording, and for clarification there, that's not an audio recording that already exists. You actually create an audio recording with this option, okay? And then finally, these 3 right here, form responses, course results, and learning objectives, those are all tied to courses. So as an instructor, if you have these things set up, you can check a box within your course to allow students to take these things over into their ePortfolio account. Okay? Those are basically what we summarize in and call artifacts. Those are all different types of artifacts or content items that can be brought into D2L ePortfolio. From there, you can create collections of your artifacts and presentations. Collections you might want to think of like a folder. Okay, if I want to create a folder for a certain class of all the items that pertain to that class, and the purpose might be for me to share that folder with somebody else. There's a couple, and some of this is terminology within D2L ePortfolio. There's a couple different options for you to get information out of here. It's to share it, where you still maintain ownership of it. You can control when you unshare that and so forth. And then there's the push. And the push is when you literally cut the strings. And only the faculty accounts have that ability to push. Okay. Presentation, that's a big one. That's actually what we typically call the ePortfolio that you're going to show to other people. In D2L ePortfolio lingo, that's called a presentation. So what you could have here is you could have virtually a lot of content, but you could make any number of presentations for whatever purposes you need. So if the program has an evaluative portfolio, they would create a new presentation, or a template could be created, and then that presentation would be pushed. That's what I'm calling the template, is the presentation. And then if they decide to use this for also a showcase, they just create another presentation, okay? Now, how are presentations shared? Presentations, you can create a URL from the presentation. So for the historical administration students, they're sharing a URL with potential employers to their ePortfolio. Presentations can be submitted to Dropboxes. So in an evaluative situation, if a D2L course was created for the purpose of these evaluations, a Dropbox folder could be created within that course, and then the student would submit the D2L presentation. You're all familiar with the Dropbox feature within D2L. You maybe just haven't noticed it. Whenever you go to that Dropbox, and then on the left, 9 times out of 10, students are choosing My Computer to go navigate to the file to submit. Well, there's some other options there on the left, and ePortfolio is one of them. So they can go right into their ePortfolio and select whatever content that Dropbox wants submitted. So, what this is here, this is actually like a news feed. So when you open this ePortfolio and you see all this information here, this is just a news feed of the items that I've been in. Like the last time I was here, I accessed this presentation on March 25th. It's kind of like Facebook. My items is really where all your content lives. And once you click on My Items, there's a filtering option that allows you to filter by artifacts, collections, presentations, reflections, objectives, and whether any information is shared or unshared. The Explore tab, okay, these are all items that have been shared, either with me or by me. Okay, and then you also have the capability of creating sharing groups. So if there's one group of people that you're going to be continually sharing with, you can set up a group, a sharing group. So that's basically just a down and dirty of ePortfolio. I want to tell you about some resources that have been developed for Portfolio. I'm going to go into a course called D2L Student Orientation. And if you choose under role, if you go back to My Home and choose the role Sample for Student, Instructor Sample for Student, is that correct?
Student Sample for Instructor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, John. Okay, you should see this course as well. What this is a self-directed training for students. I developed this and it just got released this semester. We just published, like just a couple weeks ago, published a full module for self-directed training for ePortfolio. So if I go under content, here's all the modules that we have, and ePortfolio has 28 different topics. So we cover basically everything, each artifact we describe individually, about how to add a file, how to add a reflection, how to create a presentation. And then the other resource, because of the timing of all this, when I did the student training for Pat's class before the break, this module was not available. And so the students were on break and they didn't have this to go back to. So one of Pat's students actually put together like a 22-slide PowerPoint for the students within that class to kind of help them navigate ePortfolio. And here it is right here. She'd put in screenshots and so forth. And she's given us permission to use this, and this might be very, very beneficial for your students because it's so tailored to what they need to do. So, okay, any questions about the interface or anything? Okay, I think now we want to showcase samples of what her students put together. There you go. I'd be happy to flip between if you would like.
Okay. Find where I have. this is the student that put together the outline for them. When they went home over break, they hadn't quite accomplished the actual process of putting their portfolios together, so they sort of were a bit lost. So she came up with a step-by-step guide for them. But also, I wanted to show you some things that she did with her own portfolio. She used her own banner, something that she got when she was in England studying. So this is Hadrian's Wall, actually. And if you could click on the gallery. She has had a lot of experience in different museums and doing different things. So she created this gallery, which is a wonderful visual representation of some of her experiences. And I think it would be a great selling point if she used this portfolio in looking for a position. She not only has exhibits that she's worked on, but as you get down farther, you can see she's done drafting work, and so she has quite a lot of experience. And then she also brought in, they try so hard not to have pictures of themselves. If you go down a little farther, you can see that she's brought in things from other projects that she's worked on. So let's look at Jim's. Jim is an older student who has had considerable work experience. And he's worked at Conner Prairie for a long time. He also worked at the Children's Museum. And so he took a standard banner that D2L has. There's a very pretty blue one, looks like paint. But he dropped some photos in this of his own. And then he also, if you could click on professional experience up here, this first one, he, instead of doing what some of the students did, which was to just lift out of their resume their various experiences and repeat them here, which is really not an effective solution, which we're going to work on next year. But Jim has transfers his into a narrative. Which hits the highlights of what he's done in his professional experience. I think it's much more effective, a lot shorter. What we determined was, when we talk about resumes and cover letters, that we say 5 minutes is all you get. And 5 minutes on their portfolio is probably, if they're lucky, that they will get. So they have to be able to present their material in such a way that somebody can thumb through this and pick up the highlights. He also, under publications, was rather clever, I thought, because a article that he wrote happened to be featured in History News, and so he put up a visual of the cover of that magazine. And he also hit the writing sample. He is the only one that submitted a writing sample, but I thought that was quite a good idea, and if you scroll down on it, you'll see he was able to put in not only some citations, but also an image of the item that he was writing about. So it was very individualized. Let's take a look at Desiree's. Desiree is a National Park Service type. She's done quite a bit of archaeology, and she was able to take, to make her own banner across the top of scenic places in the United States. I thought she did a really good job with that. And also under gallery, she was influenced by the first person who thought up the idea of doing the gallery. So she has now created her own gallery that showcases some of her experiences. And I thought she did a good job with that. And then Stevie also created her own banner, and I wanted to, let's see, under projects, no, under skills, that's where I wanted to hit on her, was she belongs to quite a few professional organizations, And so she has made a page up of organizations that she belongs to, and also skills. She happens to be our department tech person, and so she's quite strong on this type of thing. So one of the things we really wanted to do was to provide an opportunity for each of them to individualize their portfolios. I'll just show you one or two more. Sarah was a museum studies student as an undergrad, and if you look under projects and research, she was able to bring in things that she did when she was an undergraduate student. And sometimes they don't think that far ahead enough to have taken some visuals of that, but she was smart enough to do that. And then Amanda is very much into living history. So she has this great image of her, if you can scroll down a little bit. If you were interviewing people for a position and you saw this picture, it's probably one that would stay with you. So I thought she was good to pick something like that that would have some lasting power. Because I know when we interview people, we go through, how many did we go through? 18, I think, for our interview weekend. And afterwards, they're all a blur. So if you can do anything to make yourself stand out, I think that's to the good. I just have one more, and that's Erin. And Erin, again, was able to, I think she started with a banner from D2L and has then sort of created her own from that, and then she's been able to drop some images in here as well, so that she's really individualized it. And all of them have created sort of an introductory statement or a welcome statement that's very personal to them. So, questions?
One thing I will add, and it might be on your mind as well, this is a great tool. What happens once the student graduates? My Desire to Learn has available what they call My Desire to Learn, and it's server space that they are allowing students to create an account and then export all of their ePortfolio content over to this My Desire to Learn, in which they would have accessible, it would be accessible to them for life then. Again, the My Desire to Learn account, for each account that's created, is 2 gigabytes of space. So since we don't allow any more than 2 gigabytes in our learning environment, and that's one reason why we selected that limit with the ePortfolio under the learning environment umbrella, is so when they transfer content, they won't have so much that they can't fit it into the My Desire to Learn account. So, and that's the next step for the students with historical administration, is getting them to transfer this to a My Desire to Learn account so they can keep going with it the rest of their life.
There were a few things that we learned from this process. One was that a resume is not something you just chop into sections and import into your portfolio. I went into this not knowing that myself. But even after I realized that, and I tried to convey that to the students, they're so proud of their accomplishments that that was one place we really had a little stumbling block, and they really wanted to just repeat that same material in the portfolio. And so next year we're going to do things a little bit different on that. Second thing was I didn't anticipate that how useful it would be to have the completed project to reflect back on and to do some evaluation about their strengths and weaknesses, not to pass on to their prospective employer, but as an internal function. So I think we'll do more of that next year. And the third thing that, and this is what I learned, was I just turned them loose. I saw the end date, and I just assumed they would have it all done by that time, and they did, but it was more painful than it had to be, and next time I'm gonna set up some checkpoints so that they have to report back.
This was contained in that 1 hour course?
No,
Oh,
it started first semester in a 3-hour
Okay.
course. So ostensibly, they were supposed to be working on it first, and that's when we came and had our session with Kim, was during that course. We set the objectives, we talked about what's the process, how you get into it. And the idea was that when they went home over break, they would come back with some sort of a draft. But that didn't really happen. When they went home on break and they went surfing and I don't know what all, but it didn't have a lot to do with the portfolios. So when they came back, they really had to kind of start over again. And I want to try to not let that happen again. So,
But you did meet with Kim as a class and went
Yes.
through, okay.
yes, and that was
That's-
in November.
Okay.
So that was good, but then we needed some follow-up after that to really get them into actually doing it themselves.
Mhm.
I think if we had had a deadline soon after that for them to have a draft, that would have been really helpful. But I really feel I dropped the ball on that myself.
Kim, you did a face-to-face presentation.
Mhm.
If this was being done with online students, would what you just showed us within the orientation, would that serve the purpose of what you did with them?
That was the purpose behind the
face-to-face?
design. I can show you the topics so you can kind of get an idea. So these are the, how it's broken down, how this ePortfolio module is broken down. We talk about what is an ePortfolio. This right here is that video that you watched at the beginning. And then we talk about adding and removing artifacts. For each artifact, we have a video on how to add that. What collections are and how to create a collection, the different types of collections you can have. Presentations, and even how to edit a presentation. Her students really went, I mean, they pushed the boundaries of as far as setting up a presentation graphically. All those images that you saw, they were creating those and tweaking those in Photoshop and then editing the presentation, putting them in place of the banner that already exists. So, yeah, they,
Took a lot of pride in that.
Yeah, and they created the list that goes down the side that I talked about how we edited it. Well, they added things back in that they wanted, which was fine. It was their way of individualizing things, and they had a starting point. So that worked pretty well. What they didn't do any kind of videos or audio files, anything like that, which I think could be done, right?
Links, yes,
Yeah.
links to them,
Yeah.
yes.
This is really.
And then presenting your presentation to others, either through a share or through an internet link.
So in essence, Kim, if with an hour of video instruction, they could start playing with this.
I think so. I think so. The face-to-face, I mean, obviously, if it's an online class, that's the option, right? And that's what this was designed for. The face-to-face seemed to really help, you know,
Great for my students.
to get that first, just get used to the interface type of thing.
And they could
But
ask
when that's not
questions.
possible.
It was very.
I have, exactly. I do have, you'll see that this topic right here is set to draft. We had an issue with D2L in the link between our ePortfolio and our learning environment to the My Desire to Learn, and we've got that worked out. So we're actually finalizing everything, and this will be all about setting up a My Desire to Learn account for them after they leave Eastern. I've also got a PDF quick guide of the interface to in What's an ePortfolio, right there. So it shows you the screen that you saw with numbers of, and explains what's this. So, and you have access to this, you know, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right, yeah, I got
Yeah.
into that.
If your
So-
Have
students
access to it.
Absolutely,
wanted,
yes.
To use the e-portfolio as a showcase, as something that they might use in trying to get a job. Many of the jobs that I see my students going for are now all electronic. There's nothing mailed,
Mhm.
which is great, because we've talked about them putting the link in their cover letter.
Mhm.
Well, if they had to put it in a written cover letter, it would be quite a challenge for someone to type that up.
Right.
But one of my students was able to take that link, and she now has it on her letterhead, and it just says e-portfolio, and you can just click on that, and you're there.
This is really interesting. I really enjoyed this. Unfortunately, I have to leave and go to
Yeah.
Parkland, but thank you. And I didn't
Thanks
even know
for-
you had this master's program, so I just learned all kinds of things today.
We're glad you came.
With that said too, I see this whole D2L student orientation course being evolving. I've got an evaluation attached to it. So if you see things within your online students that we could tweak to make it a little bit better, I'm open to that.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I want to implement this in the fall, so you'll be seeing
Great,
me.
great.
You might get sick of me.
no, it might be the other way around, I don't know.
Thank you very much. This was very informative. Thanks for.
Thank you, thanks for
you
coming,
letting me
yes,
Kim.
yes.
It was nice meeting you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to implement this in the fall. For my communication, managerial communication course. Them set up they're gonna have to go back and dig out items that they've saved to
Mm,
bring them in, because most of them are seniors.
okay.
But, or I can also set it up for everything that they do in my class.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mhm.
think it would be better for them I think for them it would be better to set that for, that they can take it with them. Click on that e-portfolio. So, yeah, I like it.
Yeah, her students did a great job.
Well,
Yeah.
I think my students did not, it's funny because they're going into museums, but they did not initially appreciate how much the visuals add,
Mhm.
and how